The biggest changes for this patch are the Janna rework, that's massive. Then on top of that, we have Kha'Zix Dustblade, we have the Wukong buff as well, and then also the Hecarim nerf. Hey, what's up guys, Darkbreaker here, and welcome to today's tier list for patch 4.3. The Janna got reworked, and we have a few changes. Massive Hecarim nerf, Katarina getting nerfed, Red Kayn getting buffed, Renekton getting a buff. Then we have Wukong also, massive Wukong buff, plus a Cincher buff, and some other changes for items and rune changes. You can check out my video that I made for the patch notes already about the first look. And I hope you guys will enjoy this video. I will give you my personal opinion about the best champions in the meta for each position and what I think is strong right now. Obviously this is just my personal opinion and just a recommendation for you guys, and maybe you guys should listen to me because now we are Silver Ain Breaker. We finally got Silver Ain in the last 2 weeks playing solo queue, and there's a sexy Silver Ain video coming out soon on Monday, if I'm not wrong. So Monday, Silver Ain video, and I hope you guys will enjoy this video as well. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you guys are enjoying my tier list and you guys wanna keep up to date and show some support, that you guys enjoy these type of tier lists. But yeah, anyways, let's get started with the Baron lane. And remember, this is not in order, by the way. I just put them, like you can see, Aatrox, I mean, it's kind of alphabetic because I'm just keep moving them up, and that's how I do it normally. But yeah, anyways, let's get started. Pick up the patch for the Baron lane. I think I find that very hard for the Baron lane, because Baron lane, there's not a champion that is completely standing out to me where I'm like, wow, that champion is absolutely broken and that champion needs to be permabanned. I feel like Baron lane right now isn't as strong as it used to be in the meta. The meta is very jungle and ADC defined. In solo queue at least. Solo queue jungler are impacting the game, and then in the late game it's a bot difference. Most of the times better ADC wins the game. Obviously mid lane, a good mid laner can rotate and snowball and be strong in teamfights as well, but the Baron impact is not that insane right now. Whether you play teamfight orientated Baron laners or you're playing split push orientated Baron laners, it doesn't really matter too much. And since there's not a champion standing out, in my opinion, in the Baron lane, I just put them into S+, and there's no pick of the patch, but you guys can tell me what you guys think is the strongest Baron laner right now in solo queue. Anyways, let's get started. I'm gonna give you guys my in-depth explanation about each champion, why they are ranked at each position, and what makes them strong, what makes them weak, etc. So for Aatrox, Aatrox is a champion that is very strong in the lane. He is tanky, he has a lot of sustain, and he has really good carry potential thanks to his damage. So that guy has a complete package and is really strong. Then we have Akali. Akali is a strong assassin that is amazing in team fights to just one-shot the backline. On top of that, in the 1vs1, she obviously has really good dual power. Garen is a tanky beginner friendly champion that is, I mean, this guy is tanky, he has damage reduction, he has the silence, he has the 2 damage ultimate to execute people, so he's good in the 1vs1 and also amazing as a frontline / meat shield in the team fights. Now we have Gwen. Gwen honestly super underrated. I'm not sure why the pick rate of her is not that good, but I think the champion is just not that easy to play and you need to focus on farming. But Gwen in the late game is one of the strongest hyper carry champions that is absolutely demolishing through tanks and squishy targets, since she has really good burst damage with the ultimate, and she has 2 damage on top of that and tons of sustain. Jax is one of the best late game duelists and one of the best macro split pushers, since he can just punish people for ignoring his split push and just getting multiple turrets very quickly. So Jax, amazing split pushing duelist and a late game insanely strong. Now we have Camille. Camille is a champion that is has high mobility, has really good gank power with the ultimate to catch people and flank onto the backline. On top of that, she's a great duelist and good at split pushing as well. So overall, very strong pick, and she has 2 damage on top of that. Gragas is a champion that is very versatile. You can play him both in full AP or tanky or hybrid, so you have a lot of variety in terms of his itemization. That champion is just super, I mean, super well-rounded, that's the right word, that you can use him however you want to, depending on what your team comp needs, whether it's gonna be you need a full burst AP champion that can pick off people, or crowd control machine with a knockbacks thanks to his dashes over and over and his ultimate to catch people. Now with Vladimir is one of the best late game scaling champions with tons of damage and sustain. Renekton got a massive buff on his first ability, giving him more damage and sustain. That's why I put him up again. He's a great duelist, very strong in the early game, good in teamfights as well thanks to his dashing abilities. His ultimate makes him tanky, and then he has his second ability that can stun people. But remember, this champion falls off in the late game. On is still a very strong champion that has so much crowd control in team fights and a lot of utility as well. And as a duo, as a 1v1 duelist, he still does fine, but he isn't as broken as he used to be. He's still a very strong pick though. Now we have Tank Yasuo. Honestly, Tank Yasuo is busted right now. I'm not sure, but that champion does a lot of damage, is super tanky, and provides so much crowd control in team fights. Like, that champion is just so good with the what was it? You just add Tabai into Divine Thunderer, makes him super tanky and hard to kill, and then in team fights he scales super hard into the late game, kind of becomes unkillable, still have a lot of damage, and then he perma tornadoes you like over and over with the AoE Q3, where he just keeps knocking people up, so that's really strong. Now next champion is gonna be Fiora. Fiora, in my opinion, is a good duelist and scales really good into the late game, but her team fight power isn't easy to execute. A lot of times Fiora players will have a problem to carry team fights in the late game, since Fiora is not the greatest team fight champion. She's more orientated as a split pusher, but yeah, high skill ceiling. Riven is a champion that has high mobility and high burst damage, so she is pretty good. Jace, what makes him strong is his early game, obviously, that he is both range and melee, so he can freeze and kite people. He has a lot of burst damage thanks to his poking, and then also decent split push value. Shen is a teamfight oriented champion that can use his ultimate to join teamfights. He has a taunt as well for playmaking, and obviously he is pretty good against tanky champions as well thanks to the Divine Thunderer build. And yeah, he just has a really good split push value because he can always just push the lane out and then use the ultimate to join teamfights. So very good teamfight oriented champion, but kind of falls off in the late game against some split push true damage champions. Darius is a champion that is tanky, beefy, has a lot of sustain, has good carry potential against melee champions, but has the downside of getting kited, where he might not be able to get the Noxus Might or might not be able to reach the backline, so that's the downside of Darius. Set is very similar to Darius, a juggernaut that has a lot of crowd control, is tanky, does a lot of damage. Yeah, that's it. Dr. Mundo doesn't provide that much crowd control, but he is a decently strong duelist that is good meat shield in teamfights. Malphite is super good in teamfights thanks to his ultimate. I mean, you land one good ultimate that can completely turn the teamfight, knocking everyone up, and then he is also a hard counter against champions that have a lot of physical damage. Sorry. Sion, a champion that is good as a duelist, split pusher, thanks to him being so tanky, running Hullbreaker, just suiciding, getting turrets over and over, and also a great meat shield with a lot of crowd control in teamfights. So you can split push and then use the ultimate to join teamfights, or you can use the ultimate to keep split pushing. Yeah, Wukong got buffed, the first ability giving him a lot of sustain, so you could argue and put him into S+ tier as well. Honestly, I've put Renekton as plus tier, right? If I put Renekton as plus tier, I should put Wukong as plus tier as well. Because Wukong obviously 1v1 trading wise with the buffed Q has so much sustain, and his teamfight power is so good. I mean, for a long time I had Wukong in S+, but I feel like it kind of fell off after the nerfs I did on him. Okay, anyways, let's move on. Hecarim lane. Honestly, I should move Hecarim lane, maybe. Maybe I should just remove Hecarim, I'm not gonna lie. After the nerfs I did on Hecarim's second ability, he really... I think he will struggle against a lot of champions. in the 1v1 now without the resistance, because they nerfed the resistance from 20 to 6 in the early game. I mean, you can probably still play like Tabai, Divine Sandra, Black Cleaver, building tanky, and then you can trade and then just use your third ability roam. So I think it's okay to put him A tier. I think she's still fine, even though they nerfed the second ability majorly. Teemo, strong lane bully, weak in the mid game, but late game he can become pretty damn strong. Yone is an insane strong scaling champion. Honestly, I could put Yone S tier, not gonna lie. I may put yes. I guess yes. Why not? I mean, the thing about Yone is that he's a strong duelist, even without items. But yeah, once he has like 3 items, his carry potential is insane in teamfights. Okay, let's move on to Zed. Zed is a high skill ceiling champion that can be good in the 1v1 and as a split pusher, but obviously you need to be skilled on that champion. Diana, I feel like Diana she can hold the lane, but she will definitely struggle against a lot of Baron laners to actually win the lane. But in teamfights, she's obviously amazing. Cannon is strong in the early game and very good in teamfights, but the downside is he's squishy and falls off in the 1v1. Akshan is a very strong lane bully that needs to dominate and punish melee champions and try to snowball, but he's very squishy and easy to gank. Aurelia has really good snowball potential when she gets a lead and is amazing in teamfights against squishy targets as well, since she has so much mobility and one-shot potential, or just burst potential. Pantheon is a champion that is very strong in the early game, especially in the early trades, but he falls off in the late game. So you need to win in the early mid game, trying to snowball, use the lead to gank left and right, and trying to extend the lead onto your allies. But if you can't do that, he will definitely fall off and be useless. Volibear is a tanky, beefy, sustained champion that can be good mid shield in teamfights, but his 1v1 he has a lot of matchups where he will struggle, but he's definitely playable with the Divine Sandra and Tabai build, just trying to out-sustain other champions, especially against melee champions. Unless you're playing against true damage champions. Vayne is a champion that is very good to hard counter some elite champion matchups, since she is gonna kite them, but she's very squishy and easy to punish. Jarvan can hold the lane pretty well, but I think he just provides pretty decent crowd control in teamfights and good initiation, but he can't really win lanes, to be fair. Swain overall, a very strong teamfight based champion with a lot of crowd control that has to farm safely under turret, but in teamfights obviously can be amazing. Urgot is very strong in the early game, kind of falls off in the strong in the early game, kind of falls off level 5 to level 8, 9. When he has his passive max out, he becomes really strong against tanky champions, thanks to the percentage damage, but against true damage champions, he definitely struggles. But he's an amazing counter against tanky champions. Kassadin is a late game scaling champion that has to focus on farming, but when he has 3-4 items, he can become a one-shot machine. Sinch, a super scaling champion, has a lot of crowd control and playmaking teamfights, but weak in the early game. Trinoma is weak in the early game, but but when he has items, he can be very good in the 1v1, and even in teamfights, he can be good when they don't have too much crowd control or kiting abilities. So you just start to running him down, and the ultimate can just soak so much damage because you're 5 seconds unkillable. Lucian is very similar to Vayne, but easier to punish, that's why B tier. Lilia Baron lane, I've seen it a few times. I think it has the potential to be good against tanky melee champions with the Liandry to counter them, but she's very scaling obviously in the early game. Then we have Olaf. Olaf is a kind of coin flippy champion that is situational against melee tanky champions that you can counter them. But overall, I wouldn't recommend picking Olaf Baron lane. I would recommend you guys to pick him just in the jungle. I feel like Warwick is a super cheesy champion, that's why I don't like him that much, but he definitely has some cheesy potential with the Divine Sandra, maybe, like because he has so much sustain to outtrade others, but not a fan of Warwick Baron lane because he has a lot of bad matchups. Now we have Graves. Graves is a champion that is super scaling and he needs time, that's why I just B tier. Nas is also super scaling and weak in the early game, B tier. Kale, very easy to punish, super scaling and very squishy, that's why just C tier. Okay, let's move on to jungle. For the pick of the patch in the jungle, it's definitely gonna be Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix is one of the best assassins in the game that is scaling into the late game like a truck, just one-shotting people. And with the Bruiser build, you can even beat tanky compositions. But the Dustblade buff they did on Kha'Zix, or the Dustblade buff they did in general, makes Kha'Zix even stronger, giving him more lethality, more burst damage, and it's just an amazing item in synergy with Kha'Zix reset mechanic on the jump. So Kha'Zix right now, one of the best junglers in the game, definitely. I mean, I did use Kha'Zix a lot on my way to Sovine as well. This champion is a must ban right now. Everyone is banning Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix, Lee Sin, Hecarim are the must bans for junglers right now, most of the times. Hecarim after the nerfs, maybe not necessary, but still very strong pick. Anyways, Lee Sin is also one of the strongest junglers in the game. Just insane mobility, high ganking pressure from the get-go, just invading, ganking non-stop, just one-shotting people left and right. Wukong after the buzz on the first ability is also really good right now, has so much sustain, has really good amazing ultimate for team fighting as well, and the second ability and the third ability allow him to gank very easily, like coming through stealth into the lane and then jumping onto the opponent, just very easy to gank onto him, and his jungle is also fun. Then we have Kayn. They did buff Red Kayn. Red Kayn is amazing counter against tanky champions because the more HP the opponents have, the more damage he will do now, thanks to the buff they did on the Red Kayn form, and also Blue Kayn form, obviously kinda inconsistent. But if you get it early and you're playing against a squishy team comp and you're snowballing, you will win the game no matter what, because that champion, when he already achieved blue form and has a lead, he's unplayable. He just becomes unplayable because he's just moving around the map so quickly and just one-shotting people left and right. Evelynn, also one of the best solo queue champions in the game, thanks to the stealth. You guys can see what these champions have all in common. Like, a lot of these champions have stealth or high mobility. But yeah, Evelynn with her stealth, just snowboarding, ganking left and right, just one-shotting people. Twitch, very similar, one of the best late game scaling champion, just amazing in the team fights, nuking everyone thanks to his true damage, and coming from the stealth, he can spam gank in the early game. Diana, one of the best team fighting assassins in the game, just one-shotting people. Aatrox, also tons of damage, tons of sustain, and really tanky as well. Hecarim, high mobility, burst damage, a lot of crowd control, also very tanky, and good playmaking thanks to the ultimate and thanks to the third ability. And the third ability allows him to roam around the map super quickly, and his jungle here is really good as well. Even though they nerfed Hecarim's second ability, a massive resistance nerf, and also slight healing nerf, he still is very good. And if you look at the Chinese website, he has one of the highest win rates next to Rammus in high elo. So I honestly underrated him. I think I put him S+ tier last time, or pick of the patch last time. But no, I think I put last tier list, I put Lee Sin, pick of the patch. And yeah, Kha'Zix, Lee Sin, and Hecarim are these three are the strongest junglers. Definitely, but with the Hecarim nerf right now, I wouldn't say necessarily that he's top 3 anymore, but Kha'Zix, Lee Sin definitely top 2 right now. Now we have Morgana. Morgana is also kind of underrated. She has so much damage against tanky champions. Like, she is the #1 counter against melee tanky champions, thanks to her kiting abilities using the bind and the Rylai slow. And then she has the Liandry for the percentage damage, just poking people down, having so much crowd control, and one of the best jungle clear speeds in the game, allowing her to power farm and just providing so much poke and crowd control in team fights. So you want to play it slowly, obviously, but if you can manage to play the team fight slowly, she will chunk everyone down and no one can reach the backline just because of the binds coming over and over, slowing people down. Nilah is actually so strong right now. That champion in the late game has so much sustain, burst damage, shielding, everything, and mobility as well. So Nilah, I'm not sure why. She's very similar to like a Twitch, like late game Nilah, hard carries almost every game. Sincho got buffed, but I don't think it makes him broken. He's a strong pick. that has a lot of damage, sustain, and tanky crowd control, but it's just not enough for S+ tier, in my opinion. Yone is a pretty strong pick, but the champion's kind of scaling. Like, he needs a lot of items, and his ganking potential is pretty good, but at the same time, it's not that easy to execute a nice gank on Yone, because you need to stack up beforehand to set up your knock-up, and then you have to land the ultimate as well. But yeah, if you can snowball, you get items, and then in the late game, Yone is one of the strongest late game champions. Pantheon with the crit build, also very strong and hot pick meta in high elo right now. A lot of people are using him to snowball the game, spam ganking left and right, and then even though he falls off in the late game with the crit build, he kind of still becomes viable to one-shot the backline. So that's that, but he definitely doesn't have the 1 vs 9 hyper carry potential like other champions above him. Gragas AP is still a very good pick, does a lot of damage. Yeah, just one-shotting playmaking champion. Fizz, weak in the early game kinda, but one of the best late game one-shotting champions. Jarvan, I do like Jarvan with a lethality build, snowballing in the early game, just one-shotting people. Very good ganking potential from the get-go, starting level 2. Ribbon, also high mobility burst damage champion. Jace, in the early game, doing tons of damage, really good poking damage. Volibear, a strong comp reliant champion that can dive people with the, thanks to the ultimate very easily. Overall, tanky, has a lot of crowd control, is pretty damn good. Shyvana is not the greatest ganking champion. She is good at power farming, getting into the late game, and just 1 vs 9ing from then on when she has 400 as stacks. Vi is a strong, like very strong early game champion in the jungle. Just her jungle clear speed is really good. She has really good ganks as well, thanks to the first ability and thanks to the ultimate. But obviously she is not a typical hyper carry champion in solo queue. She's more like a teamfight orientated champion that wants to set up for her allies. So that's why I don't put her as plus tier, because if your ADC, if your bot lane is bad, Vi most likely can carry the game 1 vs 9 on her own. While other champions have way better carry potential against late game ADCs. Like if you play Vi, you have to face like a strong late game ADC. You cannot carry that on your own, because if you commit, they have stasis, so they can nullify your ultimate, or the support is gonna peel you and then they're just gonna shit on you because you're jumping with your ultimate and they just kite you back. Olaf is a situation pick that is excellent against high crowd control and tanky champions, thanks to his ultimate that allows him to ignore crowd control and his true damage as well. But obviously, you need to play him against melee champions, otherwise the ultimate will just run out, or you get kited. Shen is honestly underrated, but I do not like him that much in solo queue, because in solo queue you can't rely on your teammates a lot of times, and you have to be your own backpack. You can't, I mean, sometimes you have some people that are playing good, then let yourself get carried, but Shen is a champion that relies on having good teammates, because you want to set them up, like initiating for them, use the ultimate for someone to save them. But he is not the typical champion that carries 1 vs 9, but his ultimate is obviously amazing to counter gank. The third ability is amazing to initiate, taunt someone and catch them. Amumu, a very good teamfight orientated champion thanks to his ultimate. Rammus, spam ganking champion, and the taunt guarantees a kill normally, and obviously he's one of the best hard counters against physical damage. That's why he has one of the highest win rates in China, because people are just picking him to counter. I think his pick rate is not that high, but his win rate is high, obviously, because people only pick him to counter full physical damage compositions, and then it's a guaranteed win. Nunu is a teamfight oriented champion that can spam gank from the get-go left and right thanks to his snowball, and he has a lot of crowd control as well, so he's a good meat shield. Fiora is strong in early skirmishes, but is not that good in teamfights. Dr. Mundo, good or decent jungle clear speed, decent ganks, and is very tanky. Gwen, jungle clear speed in the early game is pretty bad, but her late game scaling is insane. Camille, early game is pretty weak, but she has a good ultimate to set up ganks and high mobility as well. Then we have Zed that has high skill ceiling and has a lot of potential to gank people thanks to his ultimate to dive them, but obviously he's very snowball reliant as well. Akshan, cheesy pick, snowball reliant, but can be pretty good in the late game thanks to his crit damage and his scaling. Aurelia is snowball reliant champion, but she has a lot of sustain and burst damage. Darius is, I already explained Darius. Darius is really good against melee champions. He has a lot of sustain and he has true damage on his ultimate. Urgot from the get-go, a very good early game jungle clear champion that can gank. Thanks to his third ability, he's tanky, he has a lot of crowd control, but he falls off in the late game. Renekton overall solid. He's a decent jungler. He has good crowd control, he has a dash, his jungle clear is okay. Rengar is kind of coin flip, where he can become a one-shotting machine or you become a minion. So that's kind of the inconsistency of Rengar. Grace, late game monster, early game weak. Yasuo, early game weak, late game monster. Same for Lilia, early game weak, late game monster. And you also want to play against melee champions or tanky champions using the Liandry and Riftmaker to your advantage. Kayle in the jungle has the advantage that she can freely farm, or it's easier for her to farm safely to scale. Weak in the early game, but super good late game champion. Nautilus is a tanky crowd control based champion that can gank with the first ability and the ultimate to set up ganks, and obviously you can also run him AP to one-shot people. Master Yi is kinda inconsistent champion. Either he's running you down, becoming super fat, or he doesn't run you down and he is a minion that everyone flames. And also, you need to pick him against champions that don't have too much crowd control. Echo Jungle, very scaling, but late game, a lot of playmaking potential and good one-shot potential. Now Pyke, he's kind of like Lee Sin, but a war mod version of Lee Sin right now, because his jungle clear is non-existent, but he has very good playmaking and ganking potential in the early game. Singe weak in the early game, but some nice cheesy ganks possible, and his late game team fighting is insane. Warwick, also very cheesy champion that is dog shit in team fights. Warwick, dog, nice. Tryndamere, very weak in the early game, but late game very good. Same for Jax. Jungle clear speed very bad in the early game, but late game he's skated like a truck. That guy has way too much sustain and way too much damage in the late game. It just becomes unplayable. And this champion just becomes unplayable once he has 3 items. He is too strong. I don't know, they nerfed him, but he's still too strong. Now for S+, Ahri, high mobility burst assassin with a lot of playmaking. Akali, already said earlier, amazing in team fights, just one-shotting people. Annie, very good playmaking potential with the ultimate. Then we have Lux having the bind, a lot of crowd control. Then also the shield value from the second ability is insane in team fights, and she has a lot of burst damage as well. Akshan is one of the strongest lane bodies in the mid lane, and his snowball potential is absolutely insane, just ganking left and right and controlling the map. Then we have Diana. Diana's one of the best teamfight assassins, just super good thanks to the ultimate and the mobility. Khazad-dûm, one of the best late game scaling champion, and that can one-shot people, and he has a lot of mobility as well. Yone in the mid lane is super strong duelist and one of the best late game scaling champions as well, that has a lot of playmaking and one-shot potential. Zed, a super strong duelist, 1 versus 1, and then he can just one-shot people in the backline very quickly. Corki, amazing in teamfights, has a lot of poking damage, and the package in the package at objective teamfights like Dragon, Herald, Baron is amazing. Tank Yasuo is broken right now. Too much damage and too tanky as well. It's very hard to punish Tank Yasuo. Honestly, I do like Galio. I feel like Galio lately has been really good in this meta, because he has really good poking damage. He has very good initiation and setups with his taunt and with his dash, like he can dash, taunt people, and then he has to knock up from the ultimate as well, so that's super useful. Having a global ultimate to join team fights is obviously very good. Zoe, S tier, still strong poking champion, but definitely not as oppressive as beforehand. Twisted Fate, a very macro orientated champion, but with the ultimate you can snowball and extend your lead to other lanes. Katarina, massive nerf on the passive, reducing the scaling and the base damage of the passive, and the passive is where a lot of damage comes from, because you jump on your daggers and every time you pick the dagger up, the passive pops and you're doing a lot of damage. So they did nerf the passive by a lot, so that's why I just put her on S tier. But obviously, one reset and she can still carry team fights very easily. Swain is a champion that is kind of like a bruiser for APs, has tanky, a lot of core control and decent damage. Vex is a strong assassin with good poking damage and has reset mechanic as well. Orianna, Karma and Ziggs are strong poking utility mages. I feel like Karma isn't as strong as she used to be, and therefore I'm just putting her S tier now. But overall these champions shine the best when they have some frontline and you can play the team fight slowly and chunking people down with your poke damage. Fizz is not the strongest in the early game, has a hard time against ranged champions, but once he has level 5, he has the all-in potential once he lands the ultimate to kill people, and obviously when he has like 3-4 items he can just keep one-shotting and picking people off. Gragas, consistent poking, playmaking champion. Lucian, high mobility and a lot of burst damage as well. Irelia, very good in the 1v1, and obviously in teamfights she can be amazing. Veiga, kind of scaling in the early game, but provides a lot of value and crowd control in teamfights. Jace, a very strong lane bully and good poking damage with the mana immune. Then we have Riven, high mobility, champion that counters a lot of melee champions or can beat a lot of melee champions, and then she can rotate and gank left and right. Then we have Pyke. Pyke still good in the mid lane thanks to his roaming and playmaking potential, and obviously the ultimate provides a lot of gold value for the whole team because it kind of inflates. Like, let's say the kill count is 30-30, your team side will have way more gold thanks to the Pyke ultimate. Now we have Nilah. Nilah is honestly very strong right now. When she has items she can just carry teamfights on her own, but obviously in the 1v1 she has some matchups that she can beat, but she also has a lot of hard matchups. Echo, weak in the early game, very scaling. Morgana, I think is also pretty weak in the early game, but can be amazing in team fights and scaled super hard into the late game. Aurelion Sol, hard to play champion, but his roaming potential and his team fight potential can be devastating when he lands a nice stun onto multiple people. Gwen, very scaling champion, but obviously in the late game she's a monster. Brand, I think the issue I have with him is his range is not as big as the others, and he is easy to punish because he has no mobility, but obviously he has a lot of burst damage and a lot of AoE damage in team fights. Since is a Singed, can be pretty good in the mid lane thanks to his roaming power and his playmaking in the early game, and then in teamfights he obviously scales and has a lot of playmaking as well. Garen, decent strong champion in the mid lane, good against melee champions. Cannon, strong in teamfights. Kai'Sa, very strong in late game or at late game teamfights, but obviously she has a lot of hard matchups in the mid lane. Pantheon, I feel like most Pantheon players are just inters, that's why I just put him B tier. But Pantheon obviously is a strong snowballing champion that can use the ultimate to gank left and right, but he falls off in the late game. Kayle, very late game scaling, but obviously in the mid lane she has an easier time than in the Baron lane. Lilia, also very scaling. I think Seraphine is pretty weak in the early mid game, but a good ultimate can be devastating in teamfights. Let's move on to ADC. For ADC, pick of the patch is going to be Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa is still absolutely broken with the AP build, doing tons of damage. Then for S plus tier, it's going to be Ezreal. Ezreal, late game scaling, poking champion, super good, high mobility. Lucian, also high mobility burst damage. Corki, excellent poking damage, and the package is fantastic in team fights. Jhin, strong in the early game, has really good one-shot potential and burst damage. Tristana, one of the best late game scaling champions that is just gonna run you down with an enchanter. Caitlyn, I honestly moved Caitlyn up. Do you guys know why? Because everyone is losing to Caitlyn in the lane, and then Caitlyn is just dominating from the get-go the whole map. Like so many times, Caitlyn players are getting the first turret, then they are going mid lane, getting the mid turret, then they're going from mid lane to the Baron lane and getting the turret as well. And the main reason is because of the range advantage that she has over a lot of ADCs, that she tends to dominate the early game. And throughout the whole game, she's very consistent in terms of having a very long range to kite and poke people down. So that's why Aspasia actually... I feel like she just dominates too many ADCs from the get-go, and people just tend to always lose to Caitlyn. That's why moving her up. Samira is a champion that is situational, can be. She's the Katarina. She's like Katarina of ADC. Get one reset, one nice ultimate, you just win the team fight, and she has a lot of sustain. Draven, very strong early game champion, a very snowball orientated S tier. Misfortune, strong in the early game, really good ultimate in team fights. Saya, super consistent champion that has very good kiting and comeback or return potential thanks to the feathers, and self-peel with the ultimate. Neela, very strong, but in the early game she is... I mean, Neela in team fights is very strong, but obviously she needs the right setup, like an engaging, like a Rakan or something that is engaging first, and then she's following, using the ultimate and just nuking everyone. Has a lot of sustain and shielding, but obviously the laning phase is very hard. Very strong poking champion and has a lot of utility in team fights as well. Consistent S tier. Karma, APCs, I think is A tier, provides a lot of poking damage, same for the Lux as well, or same for the Orianna as well. So these are APCs that have overall very consistent performance in team fights when they have frontline, and you need APC. Okay, like this. Now we have Ashe. I think Ashe has a lot of utility thanks to the second ability and thanks to the ultimate to slow people down or to catch people and set up pickoffs. Twitch, Jinx, and Vayne and Zeri. I summarized those four together. They are monsters in the late game, and when they have enchanters that can buff them up in the late game, they just run people down and they're insane hyper carries, right? But in the early game, in the laning phase, they are super weak and easy to punish. That's the downside. They need minimum 3 items, and best case, they have like an enchanter. Lulu, Yumi, maybe a Nami or something to make them work. Akshan, cheesy ADC pick, same for Twisted Fate, I mean can work, but kinda situational. Morgana and Brand, also kinda situational APCs that are outranged and weaker in the early game than the others. Then we have Senna that I don't think is that good as an ADC, because she is very scaling and she doesn't do as much DPS as an ADC in comparison as a support. Let's move on to support. For support, I think pick of the patch still remains Yuumi. This champion is absolutely broken, and Yuumi plus a hyper carry ADC is GG. It is just a GG. Janna rework is massive, and with the harmonic echo buff, it allows her to heal people a lot. I feel like they reduced or they removed the skill expression that you had on Janna, making her way easier and more powerful. She can throw 2 tornadoes, the second ability can hit 3 people, and you can buff people constantly, giving the movement speed. You can shield multiple people now, you can shield yourself and someone else, and the ultimate you can use it while walking still. So if you walk while using the ultimate healing will not get cancelled, but obviously they removed the single shield value and the healing of the ultimate, so kind of different but still very good. Now for Lux. Lux still very strong support, has a lot of utility, has a lot of poking damage. She has the bind for crowd control, the second ability for shielding, and a lot of burst damage. Soraka providing way too much healing, and with one tank, you just need one tank for Soraka, and that tank becomes unkillable pretty much. Lulu, strong enchanting champion. With a hyper carry champion, she will just run you down in the late game. Nami, honestly I really like Nami right now. That champion has so much utility, playmaking potential with the bubbles and with the ultimate, and then she also provides attack speed and healing. Now let's see, let's summarize this way. I mean, you guys already know the drill by now. These champions here are tanky playmaking champions with a lot of roaming potential. So Alistair, that champion has AoE knockup, and the ultimate gives him damage reduction. Then we have Leona, single target stun, very good to counter enchanters and has good initiation, Thresh with his hooks, and the Lantern to save people, the ultimate to zone people, Gregor's ultimate to catch people, and the third ability to knock them up. Rakan has AoE Taunt plus AoE Knockup, Galio has AoE Taunt and also AoE Knockup and Global Ultimate. Nautilus, his auto attacks are rooting people. You have the hook on the first ability, the third ability slows them, second ability makes him tanky, and ultimate to catch people. Pike, roaming, playmaking monster still. Akama, provides a lot of poking and utility value thanks to the movement speed and thanks to the mantra. With the mantra, she can root multiple people or shield and give multiple people movement speed, and then the ultimate as well, doing tons of damage. But I feel like she is kind of falling off in comparison to other champions a bit. I mean, I'm not sure, S plus S, no, in between maybe. Morgana, overall pretty solid, has good poking damage and crowd control and utility value, same for the Ashe with the ultimate. Then we have Sona, late game scale. Late game she's a monster, but in the early game she's pretty weak, but she provides a lot of healing, shielding, and the ultimate for AoE stun. On and Zed, let's summarize them together. I think On and Zed, these champions are item reliant and they need a lot of gold, but they have a lot of playmaking potential. Then we have Senna. Senna in the right team comp provides a lot of value with the utility that she provides, with the crowd control, with the damage. She's like a secondary carry with a lot of utility. Braum is good against poking champions, also decent engage and disengage champion. Swain support, not the biggest fan, but provides a lot of utility. Brand as a poking mage, but doesn't provide as much utility as the Lux and is more short range as well. Seraphine also super scaling, weak in the early game, but nice ultimate, can carry teamfights obviously. Blitzcrank kinda inconsistent because people need to hook actually, and most of the times people don't know how to hook. Amumu has some value thanks to his ultimate, and then Shen with the taunt and with the ultimate as well. But yeah, that's gonna be it for the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think obviously the biggest changes for this patch are the Janna rework, that's massive. Then on top of that, we have Kha'Zix Duskblade, we have the Wukong buff as well, and then also the Hecarim nerf. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I see you guys next time. Bye bye. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe and tell me your opinion about the tier list and what you think are the strongest champions. I see you.
Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.